Hello, my name is Jacob Hillhouse, and I am debating on the side that the United Nations is a vehicle for world peace and cooperation. Uh, the first thing I would actually like to do is address the counter argument for this debate. Although I oppose it, I'm sure they do have very valid points to why it's not a adequate vehicle. First and foremost, they will likely argue that the United Nations is not a vehicle for world peace because since its creation, warfare and political violence has not decreased. That is not only true and a very valid point, but conversely, we must also acknowledge that no entity composed of the nations of the world will ever truly eliminate uh, warfare across the globe. But simply put, the United Nations is not a perfect entity for perfect vehicle for world peace because the countries that comprise it are not perfect vehicles for world peace. Uh, so, what the United Nations does instead of intervening militarily uh, is try to provide aid for the countries that are not only experiencing conflict but are recovering from it. We saw in the Korean War that um, intervening militarily not only doesn't work, but North Korea and South Korea are still at war technically. Um, so the only way to alleviate these conflicts and alleviate the burden of war is through humanitarian aid, which the United Nations specializes in. Um, so the chief idea is they may not be able to achieve world peace through a conventional means, uh, but the United Nations may be able to bring about peace through its charitable acts. Um, of course, we cannot fail to acknowledge the United Nations' failures over the years, as I addressed earlier. We cannot overlook its inability to adequately address uh, genocide, both in the past, as we saw in Rwanda and then in Darfur, Sudan, but also today in the persecution of Muslim minorities in Asia. So you've seen in Uyghur China and Rohingya Myanmar. Um, so obviously we cannot, as I said earlier, overlook the failures of the United Nations. I but I see no other entity that is able and willing to fight through humanitarian aid and humanitarian works for world peace and cooperation other than the United Nations. Simply, what we had to do is we had to put our faith and our abilities to help it become a vehicle for world peace. I know several of the members of the United Nations haven't been paying their dues lately, and that's a great problem. The reason why it's not succeeding all the time is because we do not put our we do not invest in it. I believe that the United Nations clearly is the best way to achieve world peace and this global cooperation, but we simply had to invest more time, more effort into it in order to invest more time and effort into world peace. Um, the idea of the United Nations is fighting is not the answer. Uh, it is ensuring that the people, the civilians, the innocents, the refugees remain safe. It is rebuilding after conflict. It is ensuring that people get good educations. It is the idea that people are not impoverished. Many people do not totally understand the great amount of work the United Nations does to actually promote these ideas of education across the globe and reducing poverty levels and fighting climate change and other stuff like that. Other vehicles to world peace, and although I don't think that those will immediately end world warfare, but I do believe that it is getting us in the right direction of it. Uh, I do believe that the United Nations has the ability to bring about world peace and global cooperation, we simply had to invest in it. We had to invest in its ideals, and we can't allow ourselves to slip into the same mistakes that we've done so many times before. That was the problem with the League of Nations, and we're seeing it now. But I do not believe that it is over for the United Nations. I believe that it is still very much the same vehicle for world peace and cooperation it was when it was started, and I believe that all we must do is simply invest in it to grow it again and to really fight for its ideals and fight for it to become the adequate vehicle for world peace and cooperation that it could be.